Hi, I'm Chris Clark, President and CEO of the Queen Creek Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to Meet the Candidate. Today we're joined by Town Council candidate, Councilmember Travis Padilla.
Thank you for having
me. Thank you for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what your background is, your experience.
Well, thank you. And first of all, thank you to the Chamber of Commerce in Queen Creek for being an integral part of our community, for doing these interviews. What better way for local candidates to get to know the community and vice versa, unless we have these forums and these interviews. So thank you for taking your time and doing it. I appreciate it. So Travis Padilla, I'm ending my fourth year, my first term on Queen Creek Town Council. I've decided to run for re-election. So this will be my first re-election campaign in the July 21st, 2026 primary. And as far as who I am and family, so we've lived in Queen Creek for 17 years now, which is hard to imagine. I can't believe it. Moved here from San Antonio, Texas, and I've got 5 children. The eldest is getting married next week, a week from tomorrow.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. I'm super excited. Yeah, so we have children ranging from 22 all the way down to 8. I have 4 girls and 1 son that's 8 years old. Got a trailer. I know, he keeps me young, that's for sure. We live here in the Chandler Heights and Hawes area. Children have gone locally to school here. I've been a business owner both in the community and an investor ever since I've been here. And my primary business is a payments business. I have 5 different businesses, so I stay just a little bit busy between 5 businesses, 5 kids, council,
and
now campaigning. But who I am is not a councilman. Who I am is a husband to the best wife ever, Janine, so supportive and loving. And my goal in life is to be the best father that I can be and create the best future for my children and other children. So.
That sounds wonderful. And being out here 17 years, you've seen a lot of changes. I got here just 20-something years ago, and it's a lot, and we've seen it all get built. What type of leadership roles, boards, committees have you served on?
Oh, good question. Thank you. There's so much we could talk about. I love that you're asking these questions. So let's see. I've been on that, and I'm currently serving on the Parks and Recreation Committee. Last year, I was on the Arts and Downtown Placement Committee. The prior year to that, I was on the Transportation Advisory Committee, which is near and dear to my heart because the roads are important to me and to all of us. I think the year before that, I was on Parks and Rec again. And then I was appointed last year in 2025 by Senate President Warren Peterson to the Municipal Tax Commission Code that is responsible for making adjustments to the community municipal tax code. And what's interesting about that position is it is a direct decision-making opportunity, meaning that we all have these committees where we give input, and that input is taken by another committee, and that committee refers it to someone else, and finally 10 steps up, you get a decision maker. This one is the final say for the MTCC to make decisions when it comes before us. And Senate President Peterson said, "You're the most fiscally responsible and conservative guy I know. I want you on it." And I said, "Do I have to?" And he said, "You don't have a choice." I said, "Okay." So I've enjoyed that. And I think the question was more geared toward committees and public more than private life, right?
Yep. Whatever you want to include.
Sure, okay.
But yeah, we want to know what you've been doing here in town.
And so in town, so then also, of course.
Obviously, people know you serve on council, but not everybody knows what that entails, or.
Sure, and some of the other areas, sure. So, and then just personally, I've been a venture crew advisor for a girls' venture crew, which is so much fun with my daughters. We've gotten to do wonderful things between kayaking, Grand Canyon, mountain biking, hiking in Glacier National Park, just doing things that challenge them, get us outside, connected to nature, and being involved in their lives, which is super fun. So I'm very active. We're very active in our church, and I'm a Sunday school teacher to the 8-year-olds, which is the funnest thing ever. So I love, that's probably my favorite thing to do, being involved with the youth. And then just serving on town council and putting time in there.
And like you said, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And why re-election, and what is it that you want to accomplish in your next term, if there is one?
Yeah, good question. Thank you. So it's difficult, I think, for all councilmen that I've spoken to. You get to the end of your term, and of course, this is only my first term, and you decide, wow, town council is super important and also super time consuming. And is this going to work is it going to continue to work for my family, for my businesses, for all the changes that we have, weddings and things like that. And so I debated about it to see if it was something that would work for us. And I ultimately decided that this service to the community and the opportunity to be involved in the decision making for the future of the town of Queen Creek, which is so important to our family now and in the future, and then all of our community, friends, family, making sure that this continues to be the safest and most prosperous town in Arizona. I decided that that's something that's worth fighting for, and so I decided to run for re-election again. It took me a little while to make that decision, but ultimately I'm happy and settled on it. So.
And with that in mind, what do you think the top challenges are that we're facing?
So in Queen Creek, we've got several challenges. From my perspective, of course, I want to make sure we continue to maintain fiscal responsibility. And I think to a large degree on council, we do that fairly well. There are some areas that I disagree with and want to continue to push back on and make sure that we keep those numbers down. And we could probably talk about those a little bit later or now, however you'd like to do it. So that's a challenge, I guess, topically, and then we can go into detail later. Of course, the challenge with our roads. I mean, the number one item that comes before us is on the council from the annual survey every year, and I don't think there's ever been a year where it's not number one, and that is transportation, traffic, congestion, roads. And to me, that is the most important thing that we can do, one of the most important things, because that's a vital role that government plays. So I only believe that we should support the proper role of government, and one of those top items that we can't do for ourselves privately as individuals are things like roads and public safety and budgets and utilities and water and things like that. So that will continue to remain a challenge. Maintaining the challenge of public safety is also difficult. We are, in my opinion, the safest community in Arizona, but we have new challenges as those from outside our community come in or pass through and deals with some of the same things that other communities do, and we have to make sure that we can keep our residents safe, making sure we continue to grow responsibly as Queen Creek continues to grow and fill out. I think we're at approximately 82,000 and change, and I think at full build out we'll be just under twice that amount. So what does Queen Creek look like 10 or 20 years from now, and what decisions can we make now to ensure that it will continue to be that safe and prosperous community that we can actually drive through and manage to get across? So those are some of the challenges.
So with that in mind, transportation, let's go to that one.
Yeah, great.
What do you think needs to be done to fix some of that?
Well, our infrastructure, we've done a good job fixing some things. I would like to add. We have a lot of scalloped lanes, scalloped streets, which that's a government term. That just means that we have 2 lanes that go down to 1, and then it might go back to 2 lanes. And you may as well not even have the second lane at that point because you're all bottlenecked in the single lane. So we need to continue to add those additional lanes. We need more turning lanes. There's discussion on council and has been, and that I'll continue to work with Muhammad Yusuf, who manages our lights and our roads, on how we program the lights so that we can get through as quickly as possible. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds. This is really up to you, your interview. But it's a zero-sum game. It's, do we have Ellsworth traffic? Do you focus on north-south traffic going through, or do you focus on east-west traffic? And getting Ellsworth traffic through is super important. The argument against prioritizing Ellsworth traffic, for example, is, okay, well now we're focusing on other communities getting through our community. What about our community crossing major corridors like Ellsworth, and how do we sync and time those lights? Not having direct access to, like your Tempes or Chandlers might have, to a highway where you're feeding them through, let's say, Ellsworth, and then we're exiting immediately out of town.
Right onto the freeway.
Yeah, what we're doing is we're just bringing them into town, and you've got a ways to go before you can get out of town. So that's important to me. I did work with some business owners at one of our busiest intersections on Ocotillo and Rittenhouse, and I proposed, and I like outside the box thinking, so I proposed to see if we could work with some of these business owners and landowners to acquire some of their property, of course not by force, but by being volunteered, and be able to create some additional turning lanes, on Rittenhouse, turning onto Ocotillo. We were close. We didn't quite have the support that we needed from the business owners to be able to acquire that property to create the additional lanes. But it doesn't mean that there aren't improvements that we can't make there in other intersections. If you want to get into the weeds on some of the other intersections that I think are super important, we can, or we could go a different direction. It's up to you.
Just for the sake of brevity, because
Okay.
these are going to be fairly time constrained.
Sure.
But I appreciate the answers that
Okay.
you have. What about, you didn't mention it, but what about water? How are we doing on
thank you.
water,
Would
and
love to
how
talk
does
about
that
water. Yes.
deal with growth? Are we able to have growth, or are we, like Cave Creek has been in the news recently about not having any?
So we all know the issue for the audience. The Colorado River is where we all get most of our water. And we have the northern and upper basin. And of course, the southern basin is treated as the redheaded stepchild of that Colorado River distribution. And then of the southern basin, Arizona seems to be the redheaded stepchild of those states. So we're kind of at the bottom of the barrel in Arizona. Everyone's fighting over Colorado River water. And what we've done is we were able to secure 110 years of water supply from Harquahala Valley near Tonopah to ensure that we have water that is an independent water supply and helps us manage and, shall we say, decide our own water destiny for the future, which is super important. So we control our own water destiny. We're going to bring that through the CAP Canal down to Queen Creek. We're going to be able to have our own independent water supply, and that's something that's going to be able to affect generations to come, which is super important.
So Queen Creek is well set, if you will, for water.
I would say that we have the most advanced water policy in the state and maybe even in the country. I believe it made even the New York Times on what we did. Our surrounding communities may not be super thrilled that we created the market for water, but if we went to acquire the water that we purchased today, it would be 2 to 3 times the price already. So very smart, forward thinking. I have to really credit some of our staff and the council for assisting in that, and shout out to Paul Gardner and the Gardner family, who's been instrumental in watering Queen Creek for a long time, generations.
Right, yeah. His family's been involved from the pioneering days, I believe, so, and recognized as a state leader. So with that in mind, will there be fee increases to go along with some of that purchasing, and are there offsets to that?
Yeah, good question. So the waterfront, Harquahala was one of the projects we have. Another, I should mention, we have a recharge site that's going in next to the olive mill, and that recharge site is going to allow us to have a dual use. It's going to have some trails as well as be for dual purpose for water. So that's another project we have. And then of course we know Bartlett Dam, right? Bartlett Dam is a longer term project, but allows us to, through the federal government cooperation, to be able to access some of that water. So those are kind of the 3 water areas. As far as the fees go, it has been 16 years since Queen Creek has had any water increase, which is amazing. And we had recently a 15% water increase on the rates. But after 16 years, that is phenomenal. And so one of the things that we were able to do, and I think that through the town wisely, it was, I believe the total savings through the town paying for the water replenishment fees was, I think it was $60 million since 2018, a tremendous amount, which has really helped keep water rates as low as possible. So will fees continue to go up in the future? I think that's going to be true for every community across the country. For Queen Creek, I believe that those fee increases will be as minimal as possible because of the investments that we've made.
Yeah, and that's good news for all of us. Yeah. And so with talking about that, and you mentioned Senator Peterson, Senate President Peterson, asking you to serve on a board. So I'm interested to see how that relates to this. But recently, the state legislature has made various kinds of proposals for bills. One of which would eliminate design standards and build whatever you want, wherever you want, and municipalities have no say. And along with that, no fees and freezing taxes for municipalities. What are your views on that? And how does that? How would that affect Queen Creek? And what can we do or not do?
Yeah, something that really affects a lot of local communities. There's the big struggle. You've got the state legislature that wants to say, let's open up development and disallow local communities from having what they consider local control. And then the other side of the argument is, of course, the municipalities want the local control. They want to be able to develop how they see fit. The legislature says you can't restrict property rights to a certain degree. I'm not on the state legislature, so I can't speak for how that works. But I will say that I'm a property rights guy, and I think it's super important that we support the property rights of the landowners. However, they're dual-sided property rights. We must protect the property rights of the newcomers, but also of the existing residents. So when we have zoning changes that come before us, cases, we have to really decide judiciously how it's going to affect the surrounding community to have whatever zone change is proposed against the general plan that we have. And I think what's super important is that we continue to listen to our local residents when they come and talk to us and tell us what type of community that they want for the future. So, on council, there has been times when they have approved zoning changes, and there's been times where zoning changes that were proposed by land use attorneys have not gotten all the way through and not been approved. And it really is a case-by-case basis. But in general, I am supportive of property rights. I'm also empathetic and understanding that we need to make sure that we have a planned community that works for everyone. And those are difficult challenges to have.
And I think you're spot on. And what you just described, though, is keeping local control, because if we were to have one of these bills pass, which they've gotten to the governor's desk in some cases, there'd be no zoning, no control whatsoever. It would just be buy it and build it. So, for example, that section that you guys were just talking about over off of, I think it was Ocotillo, something that's fairly rural at the moment in Pinal County, and somebody could buy it and put multifamily right on it if there were no local control. So would you say that local control works, or would you be more in favor of having one of these bills actually signed?
Well, in general, I think that it's been wise for communities to have a general plan, but it doesn't mean that we have to adhere to that general plan 100%.
Right.
There are exceptions to be made to that, and certainly the property rights of those who want to purchase are super important. So is it helpful to have residential in one area, industrial in another area, commercial in another area? Sure, to a degree, I can see how those things are useful. Is it also helpful in making sure that government doesn't put its thumb on the scale and prevent property owners from being able to maximize the use of their property? It is. And so those are difficult cases, and each one that comes before us, we have to decide. And that those are good issues to bring before the community that you're bringing up, because there are two sides to the argument.
Absolutely. I think the key is bringing them up here and not having the state say it's not a local issue anymore. You don't get to say whether or not industrial goes here or not. And I think those are the keys. But what about the tax?
I was going to say, thank you for bringing that up. What was it? You said the tax?
They're proposing to stop municipalities from having any more taxes of any kind, tax fees,
right,
increases of any kind, what it is where it's going to be.
Okay, so that aspect of the taxes, because there's several things we should talk about local taxes in Queen Creek that are super interesting. So, for one, I will always and forever be against new taxes, higher taxes. I understand those that say, well, how are we going to fund X, Y, Z? And my response to that is perhaps an analogy that I'll make up on the spot and might mess up, but let's just say how I run my own household or how you run your own household. If we run out of money at the end of the month, the first thing that we cut, is it food? Is it water? Or is it maybe entertainment expenses or non-necessary items? There are many items that can be cut in government before the government should go back to the residents and say, we want more taxes. And so I am always against new taxes or increased taxes. I always will be. For example, the food sales tax. I would like to eliminate the food sales tax in Queen Creek. I understand the perspective of those that don't. I'm going to continue to push for it on council, and we'll see what happens there. I think eventually we'll get there. I would like to think that we're going to get there. Another important part of taxes, I don't want to get away from your question, but there's also the item of property taxes. I don't know if it's, do you want to transition to that?
We certainly can, but I think the bigger picture is whether or not the state should tell you, as a local council person, that there's no option. You don't have an option. Something goes wrong, that's too bad. Live with whatever money you have.
I know that in the recent bill that came forward, I think one was proposed by State Representative Justin Olson, and one of those, and this more related to additional fees that local communities could not charge. One of the things that I worked with him to make sure, and I had a direct conversation with him, and he was able to change the language in his proposal. Now, we'll see how these things work out in the legislature, not up to me, but an exemption to ensure that we could implement the necessary fees that we need for our water. Now, that doesn't mean increased fees, but that might mean new fees because we have a new water source. And so ultimately, we think that these will be neutral or reductive in their costs to the residents. But we made sure, and he agreed very quickly, to allow for language that would allow us to implement our new water source, which is Harquahala Valley. So that was something I was super excited about that we got done right away. I don't know where that will pass in the legislature, but I certainly understand the concern on both sides of the issue. But in general, I think, I am a property rights guy. I am for no new taxes, no increased taxes. We're taxed enough already. Right? Taxed enough already. And I would like to not see any new taxes in that front. Yeah. We do have, however, the property tax. I don't know if you want to bring that up. That's super important. I think that we were able to freeze property taxes for the last few years, and I think it saved the residents $10 million over 3 years. If extended for an additional year, that will be a cumulative amount of $13.4 million over 4 years. Super excited about that. I want to see us freeze and even lower property taxes in the future. That would be fantastic to me. So I mentioned the food sales tax. I'd like to see that go away, and then we could get into budget items as well, which are super important. But the budget not increasing more than is commensurate with our growth is super important to me, and that we stay within the proper role of government and not fund excess spending.
And I think one of the things that I get to say that most chambers don't is that our council for the last 2 years has managed to present a smaller budget year over year. So for the last 2 years,
super excited about that.
Our council has presented smaller budgets.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit more difficult this year with revenues being flat or down somewhat.
And by the way, the number on that was $200 million reduction year over year in the overall, not the operating, but overall budget. So I voted no on the first two budgets, my first 2 years on council. They contained items that I didn't agree should be in our budget that weren't within the purview of the proper role of government, according to me. And so, but then this last year, a year ago, I did vote yes on the budget because those items were not a part of that budget, and I like to see that. This proposed year's budget, I don't know if you want to get into that, it's exciting. I like the direction we're going with it. I don't ultimately know how I'm going to vote until I see all the details, but certainly I believe that our budget should be as small as possible, We should not be funding things that we shouldn't get involved in. Stay within our proper rule of government purview. And if there are any increases, it should only be commensurate with the growth that we have, and not on additional excess items.
Yeah, and filming this when we are, budget hasn't been officially presented yet, so we will be looking forward to those. But from all that we've heard, still fairly small.
Yeah. Well, I guess it was presented in the open meeting for the budget committee, and I guess that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But not brought to the dais.
It hasn't come out yet, and everybody hasn't seen it yet. But yes, so you were talking about some things that you would want to change or cut. What did you have?
Oh, great, thank you. So, by the way, we were also able to eliminate in 2025 the town center sales tax. I was excited about that. The quarter-cent sales tax to fund the interchange. Finally, it was longer than I thought. You know, we've all heard about government taxes that were intended for one purpose and then have gone on for far longer. That Rittenhouse-Ellsworth interchange was completed quite a while ago, and so I was happy to see that we eventually got around to removing that. So that was good. I mentioned another budget item, by the way, that I should mention on the side here is that we do a 25% excess reserve, so that the difference between what we plan on for the budget and what we spend, that difference, we will put a quarter of that away for a rainy day savings, which is a great fiscally responsible policy that we have that I really like. I did mention we reduced the water replenishment fees. The other item that I'd like to see you specifically mention about what I'd like to cut. Okay, so we talked about the food sales tax. I'd like to see that removed. I'd like to see our parks and recreation budget is getting larger than I would like to see. So from my perspective, here's how I see it. We have in our proposed budget, I think approximately $16 million for parks and rec. Let's just call that a maintenance fee for argument's sake. And then we have the $2.9 million that we spend on the Horseshoe Park Equestrian Center. The town believes that that is economic development. I do not. I believe that it's basically part of Parks and Rec. That combined amount is $18.9 million, so almost $20 million a year that we're at for our Parks and Rec spending. Now, I understand that it's an important part of the community to have parks available, a place that we go to congregate, that we get physical exercise, that we enjoy, and that's part of why we love living in Queen Creek. There's also an element to being excess, and so, for example, at the Frontier Family Park, I was not one that was supportive of the level of spending we have there. I think that we can cross the boundary from proper role of government, responsibly built parks into entertainment areas like water slides and lazy rivers and luxury kitchens where we can go and cook. Now, will we all enjoy those? Absolutely. And I will use them because I now pay for them and they're already passed and they're here. But I would have preferred, and I was against the spending because I thought that it went too far. And what that does is, I liken it to purchasing a timeshare. You have the upfront cost, which might say, hey, that's not so bad. But then you look at the maintenance fees. And those annual maintenance fees continue to climb and grow up for us. So as we're building additional parks, that maintenance fee will continue to go up for the town of Queen Creek and be an albatross hanging around our neck, and we have to keep it as limited and low as possible. So that's another thing that I'd like to pull back on spending.
Well, I appreciate your time, and we've covered a lot of ground here. Where can people find more information? So
votetravisaz.com. Votetravisaz.com is my website. The Instagram handle is Travis Padilla _AZ. And then you'll be able to find and follow the campaign from there.
That's great. Yeah. Again, Councilmember Padilla, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.